say they do land the white whale, because I do think Paul George is a good fit. I think he's a guy that can step up in an absence of Embiid, doesn't need to really be relied on to carry an offense with Tyrese and Joel, can defend the perimeter, can shoot when you need him to. I think it's a good fit. Let's say they do land him. What then does the rest of the roster look like? How much financial flexibility is there? And do the Sixers kind of then have some gravitas around the league where maybe some, vet minimum type of guys, some role player types, want to take a ring chase chance? Or does Joel Embiid's injury history kind of give guys a little bit of caution there?
So I think, I don't know. It's hard to say
Sure.
this far out, obviously. I think if they were to get Paul George, or even if they get Jimmy Butler in a trade, if they get, some kind of big name, household name type guy, I do think that improves the minimum contract guys. Like you might get a few more of the ring chaser types. As far as what else you're looking at, some of it depends on the decision they make with Paul Reed, because he's one of the only other outstanding contracts that they will have. His money is non-guaranteed. So if they were to say, look, thanks, but no thanks on $9 million for Paul Reed, which I think is a fair number for what he is. It might be a little inflated. But then the difference there is you can probably get a 15 million-ish guy somewhere in that range. To then your options with him on the roster are you can get an $8 million guy with the room exception. You have about $6 million to throw at one player. And then largely the rest of the roster will be minimum players, because once Paul George signs his deal, you give Tyrese Maxey the max extension that we all know he's getting. It's drying up very quickly. So yeah, the minimum signings are going to have a huge, huge impact on this team. And I think there could be some variability there depending on, who they end up signing in free agency or who they end up trading for as the big target.
So some of those guys, as you mentioned, there's I think only Ricky Council, Paul Reed, and Tyrese and Joel. They're guaranteed to be back. Everybody else is up for grabs a little bit. Of the rest of the team, who do you think is likely back? In talking to Devon on Tuesday, he thought maybe there's a chance Nico's back. It feels like Kelly Oubre might get a little bit more money than the Sixers might want to pay him. D'Anthony Melton has the back issue. Who do you think is actually back from last year's team?
So I do think Batum is going to be a fairly big priority. If I had to guess, he's going to get one of those, whether it's the room exception or just the extra cap space they have, that $6 to $8 million. There are also some scenarios where he could get more than that, but that's one where they probably strike out on stars and they're using that cap space to have another like holding pattern year, which I know none of us around here are hoping for. Obviously, I think people would lose their minds. So I would look for Batum as a likely return. I believe both parties are interested in Lowry returning. The sticking point there will probably come down to money and role. Like I don't think that Kyle Lowry wants to be a minimum guy, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And even at 38 years old, whatever it is, he could probably get at least a decent sized role elsewhere. Now he can't start here, right? Like that was a problem for the Sixers.
Sure.
I think he played well, given that he's as old as he is. I'm talking about him like he's more than like 4 years older than me. But it's in NBA years, you age like dog years in the late 30s. So I think there's probably some interest in Lowry. Oubre is going to be tough because I don't know what his market is quite yet. I know that he had a good year, a bounce back year on a good team, which a lot of people have been skeptical of him after the 20 points a game in Charlotte, but on a team that was going nowhere.
Yeah.
I do think there's a decent chance he just gets a contract that prices them out. So we'll see what happens there. And Buddy Hield is the other interesting one for me. Obviously, they gave up a decent amount at the deadline for him. Didn't fit as well as they thought, but they also didn't get as many minutes with him and Joel on the floor together as maybe the front office would have expected when they traded for him. So that's one that's going to depend on, where does the league value Buddy Hield at this point? Do they still view him in that, $10 to $15 million a year range? Then that probably is a thanks, but no thanks. But he's been on 4 teams now. He's had an up and down career. Defensively, he's not, the most trustworthy, reliable guy. And so if we go into it with that mindset and think the league believes the same thing, maybe they end up stealing him at a fair number and he's back here and he ends up being a valuable guy off the bench at a fairly low number. So it's a lot of, let's see what the market says in free agency. Frankly, there aren't a lot of teams, at least like good teams, with major cap space this summer. You're competing with the Detroits, the Orlandos, the Spurs, and then beyond that, there are not a lot of teams operating with a lot of money to spend. So the Sixers will have a lot to say in how the market plays out this summer.
We all city like the mayor.